Hi everyone, this is Julianne Victoria of Through the Peacock's Eyes. Welcome to my channel. So in this video, I'm going to talk about my Saturn year. So I'm going to talk about the year that Saturn was transiting and sitting on my ascendant the entire year. So within plus or minus 5 degrees of my ascendant or rising sign. I want to talk about this because if you've been following me for a while, I don't prescribe or subscribe to doom and gloom astrology. I feel everything in astrology, like this realm of duality, has both positive and negative aspects. Astrology shows us the possibilities, sometimes the probabilities, but our free will can alter that path. Now, my Saturn year was from December 2016 to December 2017, pretty much from solstice to solstice. And that's the entire year that Saturn was plus or minus 5 degrees of my ascendant, usually within 3 degrees, so conjoined my ascendant. And that happened because of a retrograde motion. And so Saturn moved over, moved back, moved over, moved back. Now, that was the year that I was pregnant. That was basically December 2016, my pregnancy started, and right about when Saturn hit that solstice, I knew I was pregnant before I had any evidence that I was pregnant. And then it went into December, so those few months after my traumatic birth, and I do have videos on that. I'll link one on screen for you if you want to check it out towards the end of this video, or just go to my channel page and search pregnancy. It'll pop up. So it was a very trying time. So in astrology, Saturn is often viewed of as like all bad. He's called a malefic, like in Vedic astrology. He does bring challenges. He does bring obstacles. He does require us to be patient. He does slow things down. Now, Saturn very specifically represents physical things. Not always, because he also represents transformation, and that's an inner process, but he can represent physical things, physicality, the physical body. And the ascendant or rising sign in astrology represents the physical body, the form each of us is born into in this or in a given lifetime. So this was a very physical transit. Saturn is also seen as the Grim Reaper. So you could look at this as like, that's not a good sign for a pregnancy year. But what I want to show you guys is that, and this is why I don't subscribe or prescribe, whichever you want to say it, to doom and gloom astrology, is because you could look at that and sort of be the stereotypical Saturn transiting the ascendant, like, oh, you're going to have a lot of physical problems, you're going to have a lot of pain, it's going to be a horrible time. And it was a challenging time. And there's like no good will come of it. But that's not always the case. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to shrink myself down, show you my chart with the transits of my estimated labor date, and show you what was going on, and hopefully give you guys an example of how to look at the possibilities. And one thing that I don't like when I hear people, so I've gotten emails over the years from people, especially when they're trying to get another reading and they want to see my perspective. People often say like, oh, I got a reading from someone, I don't know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever, and it was all negative. They saw all these things, bad things would happen to me. And sometimes it's like they did happen. But not everything is totally set in stone. There's too many variables of minds and people's free wills and your own for things to be 100% set in stone and predictable. Now, there are tendencies, there are energies where things are likely to happen. And sometimes we can alter that once we're aware of that. And if we can't alter it, we can alter how we prepare for it or how we manage it, handle it, view it, etc. Okay, so I'm going to flip things around. I will be right back, and I'm going to go through what the chart looked like my Saturn year and what kind of the mainstream interpretation would be, and how it was different for me, because obviously I'm still here. Okay, so I've placed myself in the middle of the chart here, so that should be in the least least troublesome spot. So this is my birth chart. So the black planet. So I'm doing this from Western astrology perspective, but similar things played out in Vedic astrology, because transits are in positions. Like if something's transiting your ascendant, it's transiting your ascendant. So this is my natal chart, my natal planet placements. And here is my ascendant. And as you can see, the transits I placed for my estimated labor date was September 1st. That's not when it happened. It was much later, but September 1st, 2017. So here you can see Saturn, and his line is right there, conjoined Black Moon Lilith, on top of, so 2 degrees away from my ascendant. So he was floating from here to here my entire pregnancy year and a few months beyond. Also, often, not when he was on this side, but often conjoined my North Node, which represents karma, in my 12th house. So a lot of deep karmic, psychological, subconscious experiences were stirred up by this. And I'm not going to do a full chart reading, but just kind of give you an example here. So we had Saturn on my ascendant. A typical sort of mainstream astrology interpretation, again, would be like lots of physical problems, physical pain, great challenges, and if an astrologer did this, possibly death. Now, I don't predict death in readings, but just for this example, just because it was kind of extreme. I mean, I looked at my chart and thought, this is going to be rough. But at the same time, I know that I can either alter what I can, and if I can't, I can, knowing that it's going to be rough, take care of myself the best I can and do what I can to make it as less challenging as possible. Okay, I'm just gonna let that airplane pass because it's very loud. Okay, so I looked at this chart of my predicted due date, and I was looking at my chart, throughout my pregnancy, knowing Saturn was on my ascendant, knowing that the ascendant representing me, Julie, in this lifetime, this physical form, Saturn representing slowdown and obstacles and challenges, especially physical, especially on the ascendant, that I would have to slow down quite a bit. And I did. I didn't try to force myself to get out there and do anything. If I needed to sleep on the couch for 3 days, I did. I let myself rest. I listened to it. And I often stress this with clients if they're going through a challenging Saturn transit, especially like a Saturn return or in Vedic astrology Sadasati, is to not fight the Saturn energy. Because Saturn, even though he's looked at as a bad guy, he's dreaded, he's called a malefic, he is the teacher of, let's say, Jupiter or Guru. He is the wise old man. He slows us down for a reason. And so if we work with the slowness that comes with Saturn's transits and energies, they actually benefit us long term, just not in the immediate. Saturn is slow long-term energy. Saturn also likes solid foundations. Saturn wants things to happen happily for us in the long term, but in the short term, we need to slow down. We need to see what challenges and obstacles are presented and not run into them and try to ram them over, but stop and see what we need to learn from the experiences. So I worked, knowing this and also just listening to my body and how I felt, I slowed down, and I almost had to slow down. It was that bad. And again, if you want to know, I have a couple videos on my pregnancy labor experience. You can check those out. But I knew it was heavy. Saturn is heavy. I knew it was heavy, a heavy year. And it was difficult. It was a very difficult pregnancy. My whole body was like, more so than like pregnant women say, oh, my body feels different. It was like completely different from how I normally am. And that is totally the Saturn transit. But I didn't fight it. I worked with it. I just listened to it. I slowed down. I slowed down completely. I stopped working after my first trimester, mostly, because people would still contact me and ask for readings. I limited it to 1 week. That's about all the energy I had. I just worked with it. So, besides Saturn on my ascendant that entire year and conjoined my ascendant basically during labor, I also was approaching my Mars return, and this is in my eighth house of death, change, and transformation. So, Mars return, Mars can also represent surgery. Even though I was monitored regularly, because I am a mother of advanced maternal age, as they say in the medical field. I had lots regular weekly, sometimes twice weekly appointments. Everything seemed fine. Everything checked out the entire pregnancy. Nothing was detectable wrong, except I did have gestational diabetes, but that was managed completely with diet. I monitored everything. Mars does represent needles, which you could say is like testing my blood sugar all the time, but also surgery. And so I saw that, and even though everything was checking out, she was head down really early on, all looked good. I just knew, and there were other reasons too, so you have to watch those other videos if you're interested. I knew I was going to need surgery just because I was approaching my Mars return. Now we also have, so you can see my natal 8th house, I have Mercury, the Sun, and Mars. It's a very hot and fiery 8th house of mine, and I love the shadow, and I love all that is hidden and occult and metaphysical. I mean, that's also 8th house. North Node was transiting this house. Again, Mars, Mercury. Mercury returns happen once a year. I also had Venus transiting there, and I think Venus helped. Venus is nurturing energy, and she was approaching my Sun, so I knew just self-care was going to be very important through this major change and transformation of my physical life. But again, like a mainstream astrologer might look and say, Saturn on the ascendant, Mars in the 8th house, approaching Mars return, things don't look good. And I don't think anyone would ethically say that, but I have again gotten those emails from people saying so-and-so said this, or I heard a story from an astrologer friend who knew some people, who had a friend who knew some like young girls who were told they were going to die at a certain age, and they both did. And my concern, and part of why I'm doing this, is that when you're told something is like written in the stars and this is going to happen and it's bad, subconsciously we can create a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so I want to point out, don't cling to those doom and gloom predictions, because again, we have free will. Knowing that energy is there, we can either look at the benefit of it, the positive side, make some different decisions, or prepare ourselves for managing that challenging time a little better. So there's all this not good stuff going on. Plus, well, you can see it because my face is in the middle. Uranus, my natal Uranus, opposite my natal Chiron. So natal Uranus opposite transiting Uranus on top of my natal Chiron. That is Uranus, earthquake, shake things up. Uranus opposite Uranus is often called midlife crisis point. Very challenging, unexpected, difficult time. And much having to do with healing. Now, a lot of this will be inner stuff, but because Saturn was on my ascendant and Mars conjoined Mars in my 8th house, I looked at this and I was like, it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. And again, if you've watched those pregnancy videos, or if you want to, they're not pleasant. It was kind of every woman's worst nightmare. I did not know if I was going to come out of this. But I've also made a video talking about death where I feel we have various exit points. And I felt that this was one, but I chose not to exit at that point. But also knowing this, I knew the delivery, which ended up being an emergency C-section, was going to be really difficult. I was pretty sure I was going to end up having surgery. 8th house is going to transform my life, which having a baby does, but transform my physical being for a while. Again, Saturn on the ascendant. And I would have to be patient and take my time and also not rush the recovery and just stay as slowed down as my body needed. So, yeah, looking at this chart, a challenging transit on a natal chart for giving birth. But, and this is what I'll emphasize here, I also saw that I could choose to make this deep transformation, 8th house energy, Saturn energy, to be my own type of rebirth. So when you know, inner transformation processes or life changes that bring about great transformations are opportunities for rebirth. And so I chose that for myself as well. To let this not destroy me and beat me down and let myself deteriorate, but to nourish myself, to take care of myself, like this Venus energy, self-care, to take care of myself and my growing baby, or, you know, after labor, both of us, as best as I could for whatever each of us needed, no matter what. And I'm sure most mothers feel this anyway. So that as I healed and recovered, which was going to be slow, because Saturn, you know, once he moved back into my first house, crossed my ascendant, he's been in my first house here, little one there. He's been in my first house, or he will be there till the end of this year, 2020. He did dip his toes out of it when he dipped into Aquarius, but transiting Saturn has been in my first house, the first house, the house of the self, the individual, but also your physical body and health this entire time. So we could say December 2016 on my ascendant and until December 2020, again around the solstice, interesting points. He's been on my ascendant or in my first house. And it's only just now that I'm feeling I have healed, that I've been pain-free, that I'm becoming more me, like my old self, but again, in a reborn way, because I've been going through this deep Saturnine slowdown transformation. And so hopefully this makes sense, and this gives you a good example of how to work with Saturn energy, how to not let it, or any astrologer, what you might read in a horoscope, like, oh, bad time of your life, horrible time, blah, 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 whatever it might say, and let that pull you down, because there's always the other side. So the other side of this was, this is a time for me to slow down. This is a time for me to learn how to take care of myself in a better and even different way, a transformed way, how to take care of myself and a child, an extension of me, how to not rush through things, not push myself, not be hard on myself. So I've learned a lot about myself, and this has also triggered up the deeper transformation, deep healing that has been waiting or needed to take place within myself. There's still more, there always is. And that's part of that is the Chiron. Transiting Uranus on my Chiron opposite my natal Uranus, which is conjoined my Vesta up there, to embrace this deep healing concerning family. So Chiron's in my 4th house, concerning family, concerning mothers, concerning ancestors. And I have done I did a bunch of ancestral healing work before all of this, but the depth that I have gone with it and where it has taken me has been kind of Uranian. All this Uranus triggering Chiron in my fourth house, um, square to my ascendant, by the way, square to Saturn transiting my ascendant. Um, yeah, I'm so appreciative of all that energy and having to slow down. And even though it was painful and challenging and incredibly difficult, I would not have done all that deep healing, all that personal healing, all that inner work concerning family and ancestors, as well as the physical healing that was a part of that opened up because of this experience. I would not have done that otherwise if I did not work with these energies. If I had resisted, if I had tried to fight through that Saturn slowdown, I might have gotten ill, my baby might have gotten injured or worse. And I would not have had those opportunities for great growth and deep healing. You can even say the revelations that came from that. So that is my Saturn year story. Of course, he's been transiting my first house since then. And I definitely, it's noticeable. It was noticeable as soon as he dipped out of my first house and dipped his toes into Aquarius. And now that Saturn is retrograde until late September, and then he moves, last few months, moves out of my first house back into Aquarius. It's been noticeable. There's been a direct shift that I've felt in my physical health, my physical well-being, as well as my inner well-being, my inner awareness, and understanding all that has transformed deep inside of me. It's been noticeable with the transit, which is quite fascinating. I mean, as an astrologer, I think that, but when you experience it very strongly like that, and most people don't experience, transit energies. And as I say that, it's not like the planet is doing something. It's just the storyline of energies at play in our life. We don't always feel them that strongly, but this was pretty strong for me in my chart, especially with that square to Chiron and Uranus transiting over that opposite my natal Uranus. It's been quite interesting, quite profound, and I'm actually really thankful for it. So I hope this was interesting for you guys. Let me know if you like to hear sort of like personal stories and how it relates to astrology, or maybe when I do tarot readings for myself and experiences. Let me know if you're interested in more videos like that. I hope this helps anyone out there who's had a very doom and gloom astrology reading to realize that it doesn't have to be that way. We can alter and change things to lesser degrees or greater degrees, depending on what it is. But we can always learn to manage things better with the knowledge that may come. Okay, I hope this is all making sense. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing. And I'll see you guys back here soon.